Welcome to The Empty Canvas, the podcast about how creativity begins. I'm the host, Pascal Anson, and today I'm joined by creative director Lucy Nurnberg. Lucy, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Is creative director okay?
I actually loved that you said that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's not something I generally say for myself, but I think that is the overarching title that would best describe me.
I don't want to label you as that, really, but I felt like it's important just to start somewhere. So if you want to kind of explain a bit more that you do more than just creative direction.
Yes.
Because I didn't want to say interior designer, because that's how we know each other, I suppose, through that context.
We met when I was studying interior design, and I think now often I tell people that, and they don't, they're kind of confused by it, even though spatial design is a big part of what I do. But I generally would say, I'm a spatial designer, I'm an event producer, but I do many different things.
See, I suppose from the outside, I see you as a spatial designer primarily because that's how we know each other. But I think that your background was in graphic design or photography? So
my background, originally I studied illustration, and then I actually I did a bit of that after I graduated from my BA, but then I spent a lot of time actually in journalism, and on the side I launched my own magazine. So I was more kind of in indie publishing, and obviously through that world, I think creative direction definitely came into it, but I was working with other art directors, graphic designers who were better than me at that time. And then I think it was only when I started studying interior design that I became way more comfortable with the graphic design of it all.
Oh, okay. I thought that the origin of it was graphic design, and then that, because I often think that graphic design doesn't really mean. Certainly when I worked on a graphic design course, there was never any actual graphics. It was just ideas generation and sort of and creative direction, and it could take any form. It wasn't posters, screen media or business cards or anything that people typically associate with graphic design, I suppose. We'll get into what creative director might mean in a little while. But I wanted to start by exploring this idea of empty canvas with you, because for me, you're somebody that has taken an idea and not only taken it in lots of different directions, which is kind of, I guess, what we're talking about in terms of what graphic design might be or might not be, and what creative direction might not be. But that idea also, you seem to have this huge ambition. And I think for somebody that's listening to this who is thinking about their own ideas, what I'm really interested in talking to you about is having one idea essentially and running with that and exploding that and growing it into this kind of, maybe it feels sometimes unwieldy, but this big thing. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how you see that kind of germ of an idea building?
Yeah, I think it's something I think about a lot, because I think I'm always someone who, maybe I only realised this recently, but I think that I am someone who just loves ideas. That's the part of any creative project I'm most excited about, is when I have the idea and then it feels really exciting. I have a lot of energy to put into it, but I think often in the past I've struggled with then making it a tangible thing, or that point where it is, you really actually have to do the development, and also often at the beginning of a project, no one else has bought into it. So you kind of have, or often I have a very big ambition for it, and then I'm like, is this worth it? With the current project I had, I definitely, because it was born out of my MA thesis project, and after I graduated, I went back and forth between thinking, do I want to do the next, or do I kind of want to invest in this, which could be quite thankless, or ultimately I decided to really go for it. But
do you know what I think? Sometimes what you just said about the idea, it sometimes feels to me a bit like a threat of an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? You've got an idea, and it's sometimes like a threat, But then there's also like the carrying out of that threat, or the carrying out of that idea, and the undertaking of the threat or the idea, which is like the heavy lifting sometimes.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes the idea is kind of like, quick, and like a threat can be quite quick. But then actually you've got to see it through. And you've got to, and that's when the heavy lifting happens.
Yeah, and I often think that like a lot of creativity is also about delusion, for me personally.
Healthy delusion sometimes.
Healthy delusion, but yeah, so often it is when you're coming up with this idea, I think you have to, it's like before the kind of logical brain has kicked in.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. So you've got to believe it.
You have to believe it, and then you get to that point where you're like, okay, well, how am I going to carry this out? And that's when it starts feeling daunting. That's when it's a threat.
So then I think there's something like, if you've got, there's really interesting what you say about the delusion, because I think sometimes if you've got so much information like an engineer about how to do something, your creativity is a little bit limited, because there's always a voice going, no, that's not going to work, or like, or if you've got a very hard business mind, it'd be like, well, that's not going to work because people aren't going to believe it.
Exactly.
And there's something really nice about having a kind of naive creative mind where you maybe see it as delusional. I think I maybe see it as sort of playful or naive, where you just think, okay, I don't care about whether it's going to work or whether people are going to buy this thing. I just want to do the idea, first of all.
Exactly. I think I've always enjoyed because I think I have a tendency to be an overthinker and a perfectionist. I'm a Virgo. So that brain kicks in a lot, but I have really excelled in... It's often if I'm, maybe it is like, okay, when I first transitioned to interior design, it was incredibly daunting, and actually I think did hinder my creativity because I was kind of quite overwhelmed. But beyond that, I think there's something quite nice about just being a bit naive about something, being an amateur, because you don't have, you don't have the baggage, and you have an idea to do something. Someone who's more experienced will probably tell you a million reasons why.
Or second guess it, or think, oh, well, in that printing process, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. And then often, because you don't know the right way to do it, you'll come at it from
a better wrong way.
Yeah, a wrong way, which is interesting to other people. So.
Yeah. It's very interesting that tension, though, between having enough experience to, know what you're doing, but then the benefit of not having the experience to allow creativity to happen and allow sort of naive pathways to open up and just think that maybe, and I think often in terms of when I look at people at different periods in their career, often when you become like a design manager, you lose a lot of creativity because you're just sort of managing other people's. You started off being a creative and being a designer, and then you go and get promoted to somebody who's just managing other people's ideas. And I think that's a bit of a shame because you've got really good at designing by that point.
Yeah.
Can you go back a little bit to when you said, I've got a tendency to be a bit of a perfectionist. Mm-hmm. Are you like, hey guys, I'm a perfectionist, what do you think of that? Or are you like, I'm a perfectionist and that doesn't always help me?
Oh, no, the latter one, yeah. I'm a perfectionist in I don't think, I'm a perfectionist in a self-critical way, in that it's never good enough for me. I don't think that my perfectionism means that I'm going to do the best job. I think it's...
But does that stop you?
Sometimes, but it really depends, where I am in a project, or I think at the moment, often when there's a lot of energy behind something, now the big project that I'm doing, it's got a life beyond me, I am now getting different opportunities for it, but I kind of feel like I'm just following it along, and I don't really have time to be.
That's good.
A perfectionist or something. So that's a different thing. What I think it's harder, where I have struggled much more in the past, is at the germ of an idea, where I'm kind of thinking, I always struggled in kind of maybe the developmental stage of, I'm really happy in either ideas, germ of an idea, big concept.
And then opening night. here it is.
Here it is.
Yeah.
And then also, I quite like, maybe it's the perfectionist, also the fact that I worked as an editor for a really long time, but it's like, I like then when it's like, okay, well, I have to just figure out how to do something practically with the limitations I have in place, whether that's budget, whether that's material. It's the middle bit where I'm like, oh, but I could push it to be so much better. That's when I'm kind of...
But I think that's quite healthy, you see, because I think if you're a perfectionist at the beginning of an idea, you're never going to start because you're always thinking the next idea might be better. And I think sometimes you just have to get on with it and start moving. But I also think in that middle bit, and I say this often if I'm doing a workshop with lots of people and we're maybe working on something as a group, I think there's something which is like this level of like, oh, fuck it, it's good enough. And the person that says that first is sort of, in my head, a little bit the enemy. And that's not about necessarily them being perfectionist or not. But I think we all can always raise that bar of like, it's good enough.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I'm hearing from you, that in that developmental period, you're constantly just trying to make it the best you can.
Yeah. But that can be painful sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's easier to stop.
It's a lot easier to stop.
And go, okay, it's fine.
Enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard to know sometimes, and I feel like often why I do so much extra work that no one, I run club nights and we're always like, for the last one, we spent 3 weeks making like a giant textile protest banner for the club and did a big ribbon cutting opening ceremony for it. No one cares, it's nice, but
no one sees that.
But that's just a thing that, I don't know.
No, I think I understand. I'm clearer about what you mean, and I think it's good that we've talked a little bit about your attitude in terms of things being good enough, or whether that's perfectionism or whether it's just arguably something that is just of really good standard and good quality. I think another thing I would like to ask you about is about your particular spirit that you approach a project with, because I also feel like there's an idea that lots of people might have, and they might be similar or they might be exactly the same, but I feel like you've got a very particular spirit when you're developing that idea, when you're growing and nurturing that idea. And for me looking at you and your work, it feels like it's quite a kind of slightly rebellious, punky attitude and spirit. But that's my perception.
I think that is true. I think because of the nature of the work that I do, like creating queer spaces, but specifically for like the dyke and flinter community, who I think are often marginalised or not really represented. I think there is a bit of there's a cheekiness about that, which I really enjoy. I think there's a thing of like, oh, no one expects us to take our space or do things or like have our own style.
Or be like this.
Yeah, it'll be like this, we're going to really push that. I also think that and you probably see that in me, because when we met and when I was studying, and I did feel really like an outsider on that course because I didn't know I didn't have an interiors background, I didn't have an architecture background. I kind of knew it, like back to what we were saying before, it's like I knew I didn't lean on, I didn't have the toolkit, I didn't have the experience to know how to do things the right way.
Yeah.
So I had to lean into, let's do this from a completely different angle.
So that's interesting. I love this about saying you don't have the toolkit or a conventional toolkit, and then you have to lean on another attribute or asset or something else in your toolbox to kind of stand out or make a statement. And maybe that's what I see. Maybe that's maybe in a setting like that where there is a kind of traditional approach that people can take, that's kind of, that they've been working on for a long time. If somebody comes into it adjacently, then maybe you do need to tap into something that those people don't have. Like, okay, so if I can't do lots of technical drawings and perfect models and renderings and animations, then watch out, because I'm going to do I'm going to do this, and maybe that's going to be your strength.
Yeah, and it took me a long time I mean, it was a 2-year course. It was only towards the end of it that I realised the tools that I could bring in.
And that's so powerful. I mean, I feel like that once you realise that power, and it's not it's an asset, it's not a hindrance, then like, you can kind of do anything.
Exactly.
See, I think just going back to that thing of if you don't have a lot of experience in something and you're kind of naive, I also think that not having that baggage really frees you up, and you can kind of do anything. You can break rules, you can do things that people haven't done before that are sort of wrong or stupid.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite difficult to hold on to that and not lose that, because the more experience we get, kind of the more sensible we get.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I'm always trying. I think about that a lot as well, of like how to preserve that energy. But I think I think it's
inherent. I think you can't learn it. You can develop it.
But I still feel. I mean, who knows? In like 10 years' time, but it's like I really know what I'm doing now, but I'm still self-taught. You know, everything is still coming from a kind of DIY perspective.
But DIY perspective, I always think, certainly it stood me in really good stead, because I think sometimes, again, that goes back to it. Yeah, you can hire people to do it and they do it perfectly. But then if you do it yourself, 50% of the time it's going to be worse, but 50% of the time it's going to be better, because it's alternative. Exactly. It's a different way of doing things. And I think that's the way to innovate, and you find out new stuff that way.
Yeah.
Certainly that's how I think about things. So sometimes, I don't know, maybe through this conversation we realised that lots of things we just think about, when you actually verbalise them, somebody else is kind of going, yeah, but that's really good, or it's kind of like this, or I think that's the point of us talking, right? That we get to those points and we see each other for those kind of strengths, which you might just take for granted that you've always been like that. I kind of think you were like that as a teenager.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, but like I couldn't see those as strengths, really.
No. But that's interesting, isn't it? That those things that others see as strengths, we sometimes don't really appreciate enough.
Yeah.
In ourselves.
Exactly.
Good.
It's hard to carry confidence in that.
So what does give you confidence then? How do you build confidence, and how have you built confidence with Dark Rescue and the kind of the idea?
I think, so I think when like Eagle Dark Rescue was born as a student project, that was a time when I actually, that was a real reckoning for me, doing that course, returning to an institution, going back to this. I always wanted to be a really good student as well. So there's all of that baggage, and you're like, obviously it's an MA, it's not a BA, there's no right way of doing things.
Yeah, we're not messing around.
But I kind of felt this, pressure to, I guess, do it the right way, even though I knew I couldn't. And so, it was, don't really know when it started, just like the whole time. I think even from first year, and like we'd had conversations. I was having a lot of conversations with my therapist at the time, who was always like, can't you just have fun with it? And
no,
it's impossible. But my brain was really not allowing that. And then I think it was like, actually it was just like the seed of the idea kind of took hold, which I think also for me it was, the original concept of Youthful Type Rescue. It's like, it's also just, I enjoy the silliness of it. That kind of takes away some of the...
I've got my cap in there, I should be wearing it.
Yeah, it's the story of an emergency rescue
in the future.
Service in the future, come to save us today. And I think because of that, because there was a kind of sense of humour with it, I could just lean in and be like, okay, I don't have to see this as this like great important thesis work. It's just like a bit of a joke that I'm gonna stretch as far as I can.
Yeah. I want to talk about a few things in there. I want to talk about the world building aspect of the growing that initial idea, but I think also you've touched on it now about humour. And I think that people take art and design so seriously. And there's there's very little room or I see very little room that people make for humour, because when you say it started as a joke, I think people can take that as a kind of throwaway line or a one-liner, and I think sometimes design can be a one-liner joke.
Yeah.
I don't see that at all with what you've done, but I see humour in it, definitely, and I think what I see is that humour allows you to do so much, whereas if it was really kind of strict or following guidelines or, you know, something, you've built in lots of things into the idea which allow you to behave in a certain, well, I think, very free way, and part of that's humour.
Yeah.
Part of that is serious activism, but part of it is also humour.
I think it was very helpful for me, and I think it's not just, you know, I was feeling the seriousness of doing an interior design project, which was something I didn't have a lot of experience in. It's also the themes of what I was working with and kind of queer, you know, it was born in this time where I could see this kind of erosion of queer rights happening. And
so this is a world building aspect.
This is, yeah, exactly. We're kind of, you know, like I wanted to make this project that was rooted, it was basically a response to this like right-wing encroaching era that we're becoming part of, and that also feels obviously very heavy. But as soon as I could, you know, like it is a very...
As soon as you made a video about it, we'll put a link to that as well, yeah.
As soon as I could like channel it through humour, that just, it was freeing, you know, and it continues to be. Yeah. Because,
but that I think is I don't want to interrupt you, because I think that, but I would love to say that from what you've said, this thing of a really heavy topic, then you make a video which is a kind of pastiche of a sort of, I don't know, mashup of lots of like American dial-in, phone-in, 90s,
kind of 80s telly,
everything.
Yeah.
That then wasn't a piece of interior design, but that video allowed you to kind of say, I think you set the stage with that video. And with that, how long is it? 2-minute clip or something. I think what's so interesting there is that's the laying of this foundation that then everything grows from. Yeah. Because there's maybe a bit of graphics in there. And of course production design and acting, sound design and lighting and all that kind of stuff. But that's, I think, a very interesting starting point and kind of ground zero for an idea. That's really funny, but also addressing a really serious topic.
Exactly. I think, for me, like a story storytelling is really important, and that's just that's the work that I enjoy, and that's kind of what I want to produce always, is something that's very accessible. I want people to be able to look at something and instantly kind of get it. So, like, I really enjoy pastiche. Like, I think pretty much all of my design work comes from an element of you're ripping off something else, which again kind of takes it's like, a really rich source of, well, I guess.
It's familiarity though, I think. No, it's kind of like, well, I'm familiar with one part of this. So I'm familiar with U-Haul, but I'm not familiar with Dyke Rescue. Yeah. So when I put those two things together, I think it makes people really curious.
Exactly.
But it's not completely something that I have to go and Google, because I know what each part of that sentence or each part of that title means. And then my brain starts to figure out, like, what's that?
Exactly.
Because some of it's familiar and some of it's not.
Yeah. I think that's really actually in like all of my work. I kind of realised, and when I came up with the very first idea of it, and I was kind of stuck at that stage, what I had realised in myself was that, like, I get most inspiration, or like my best ideas come from putting two things together that aren't necessarily
meant to be.
Definitely not meant to be. And so I did like this big brainstorm, and I was just like putting down different words that I was interested in, and then just seeing how they kind of matched up. And You Was Like Rescue came from, I had like queer transport, And I literally wrote them, and then I was like, oh, it's a moving service, but it's also run by lesbians, and it's, there's a getaway van, and there's a cat cafe, and it just like everything else just flowed from that.
Really.
Yeah.
So from that, I want to take this apart, because I think this is really important for people who are thinking about ideas about this bit. And I know, like, you just talked about it in a very kind of fluid way of like, I did this and then I did something like spouted for. But there must have been a lot of information in your head that then when you got these two things that maybe weren't meant to be together, like unlocked something. So that then there was a cascade of like, there's this and this and this, and I could draw on that. And then that kind of doesn't come from nowhere. That comes from a lot of things that have been going round and round.
Yeah, like at that point, obviously, I'd been doing months and months of research, and a lot of that research was quite heavy. I was looking at queer history, I was looking at different activist groups. There were separately lots of like design references that were going into this. So I don't know, like for me, I'm just like quite a words person. So that exercise was useful for my brain, and I can't say exactly like why that untapped it, but obviously there was all the other stuff that had clearly been ruminating in the background.
It must have felt so good, that moment when it
it was
clicks.
Big relief.
Yeah. I think those kind of moments of where an idea germinates, I talked about this in an earlier podcast about it feeling, I like to let all those things I've been thinking about, which are now suddenly sort of like falling into place, build up inside me before I start to draw or write or something. I'm very interested in what you were saying, though, about words are important and also storytelling being important. As a designer, when you say storytelling is important, what do you mean by that exactly? What does that look like?
I think that the interior design that I do is always kind of world building. Like I'm often working like within festival context or even within the club or whatever it is. It's like I want to create a slightly alternate reality. And so for me, I find it helpful always to draw on references from elsewhere. So it's just about... But yeah, I mean, like You Will Like Rescue, it continues. I enjoy the fact that it is still this kind of fictional thing that I'm playing with. And, I have people who work at all of my events who are the staff of You Will Like Rescue, but obviously...
Is it fictional, though?
It is and it isn't.
Yeah, right. But that's surprising when you say it's fictional, because...
It's very tangible and real, but also there is this element of... pretend. It's like, I thought a lot about when the project was kind of first taking off of how important it was for me to, because when we were developing it as a university project, it was like the story was everything, and it was quite like a not a complex, but like a deeply thought out story, which I told as like a final presentation, and then obviously it's removed from that world. It's just I have this touring festival venue that pops up, and I was kind of aware of like, how much do people know that actually You Will Like Rescue is 20 years in the future? Like,
do they need to know?
They don't need, I think not, but I kind of wondered at the start of like, oh, maybe I should be making more videos to kind of,
explain
at the same time as doing the real events, like we have this kind of constant this other narrative that is showing them. But I don't think it matters really now.
I kind of get what you're saying, because I think if you're trying to tell a story, you're trying to get people to buy into it and suspend their disbelief that what is happening outside is not part of this narrative, and to try. I always see it a bit like a parallel universe, and a parallel universe, I think, can exist. You just need to kind of move, and you just need to like step aside from like the normal life. And I think often I feel like I go into a bit of a parallel universe when I'm designing, because I need to blot out all those other things we've talked about. But I suppose I'm interested in this idea of what you just said a minute ago about, I forget what you said. It wasn't quite like it's not reality. It was something about
fiction.
About people existing in a fictional context for just for a little while.
Yeah.
Or I don't see what you're doing like dressing up though, because I feel like dressing up is something you can put on and something you can take off. When you put it on, you're one character. When you take it off, you're somebody else, or you're back to like your normal self. I never see you all Dyke Rescue as that.
No.
But maybe I'm just not understanding it in
No, I think
the
you're.
right way.
I guess it's like a heightened reality. You know,
Right.
it's maybe.
Yeah.
Like,
No, that's
and
really
I think
good. I love
actually
that.
it's been most useful. I think early on when I started pitching the project to festivals and trying to make it a real thing, I think I had to do that for myself. Like I had to become the big boss of Eagle Dyke Rescue, which was so.
You were born for.
No one else who can do it,
No.
and so obviously it's just me.
Yeah.
But it got again like overcoming confidence issues or whatever. It was just instantly familiar to be like, okay, this is just. I'm just going to kind of have fun with this persona. That is myself, but a bit of a heightened.
Yeah.
Like I love. I love going. Like I rent the vans that I kit out for my festivals, and I'm at these like North London mechanics lying to the men about what I'm using their vehicles for. And
Just
I
to
love
shortcut that process, because otherwise you'd be there all afternoon.
Yeah, but also I slightly worry that they're going to care that I rent their van, put a giant sign on the top of it that says Mobile Dyke Bar, But I love those. I love being that person. I love going into garages and having the conversations with the men and kind of doing the deals of it all.
So can I talk to you about something else there then? So as somebody looking at artists and designers, we see caricatures of designers, artists, sculptors, even illustrators, and I think from the outside we kind of think they're the person on the tea towel or the mug or the brochure or the catalogue who has kind of embodied then the work that we see in the gallery. I'm sort of interested in this idea that you kind of crank yourself up to like Lucy 1.5 or 150% of Lucy in order to be in charge of this thing that you've created. I think that's really interesting because it's part of you and it's an extension of you, but it's like 150% extension of you.
Exactly. I think also it's important to me that, well, I kind of knew that I wasn't, because I think when you're saying that about artists and designers, and also just like the world that we live in, it's like, I think as a creator, often you also have to be a brand.
Yeah.
And I know that, but I also, especially with Eagle Dyke Rescue, it's like, I'm not the centre of attention. I've orchestrated it in a way that I hire people who are incredible performers, incredibly funny to like hold a megaphone and kind of host my events. I want to be in the background, but I think, as you're saying, it's like I still need that to kind of command that.
Yeah.
And for everyone who I'm working with to kind of buy the vision, it's like I know that I have to be I have to like play up this idea of the boss who knows it. It's like authority. It's getting other people to be excited about what you're doing.
You have to walk the walk because otherwise it doesn't feel authentic. It feels like a play or like a stage play.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe the difference to what I was saying about dressing up and then taking it off. What I'm hearing now is that in order for this fantasy to come alive, it's authentic because it's an augmented version of you, and by extension, that then has a trickle-down effect, or it pushes the event to be 150% augmented version of reality.
Yeah.
But that's a really good message, I think, in order to help people understand how to be really ambitious and really go for something 150%.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about the aspect of the brand? Because again, from somebody looking into your work, it feels like if I asked you as the creative lead, the creative director on this, to tell me what a shoelace, a cup, a coaster, a flyer, a lamp, a sign would look like, you would have the answer like that. Because the brand aspect of that seems so kind of complete and rich and figured out. Getting to that point from an idea, I think, is really astounding for me, and really, it's really remarkable to see the kind of thoroughness of the idea that you're developing, and I'm sure it's still ongoing.
Of course, it is, and it grows all the time. And I'm interested in this as well because I think I used to struggle. I remember when we were having some tutorials together. Like a thing I always think about is the suggestion that you made, which was like we were kind of talking about what lesbian interior design looked like, and you were saying there's no reference to this. You're like, what if your final project could be a coffee table book of lesbian interior design? And I loved that idea, and I also had no idea how to do.
I had no idea what.
No, exactly. You have no idea, and I think like something like that feels so, or to me at the time felt very daunting, and like it's like I still would not be able to claim that I could ever do that.
Not yet.
Not yet. No, but it's like I guess for me with you, there was something. I'm trying to work out like when it started to click and be quite natural. I think it was because, it was sometime in developing the idea that the references just felt kind of pulled into place. And I think it is just having, I guess so many of these references are so commonplace, like I'm drawing on mechanics. I'm drawing on these like kind of hyper-masculine environments, but with there are a few different things that are going on. There's like history of like queer activism and protest posters. There's like just my love for neons and kind of eye-catching things. And then there's the very, I guess, seedy world of backstreet garages, but also and the kind of like aesthetics of that. In my mind, they all just connect and make sense. And now that I've started building more language, it's like anytime I need to adapt it to a new environment,
it's all there.
It's all there. I kind of have all the pieces in the back of my mind, or I look up a few more pieces.
But do you think that's because you've also been curious and looking at these things for a long time?
Yeah.
And whether it's documenting them through very particular photography or just kind of snaps on your phone, you've built up a library of language, subconsciously, even consciously and subconsciously, so that when you're asked to do something, you can kind of just pull it down and be like, well, that's what the shoelace looks like. That's what the coaster looks like.
Exactly. I think so.
Yeah.
I think that process is going on all the time. But I guess it was, some of these environments I probably wasn't that interested in before. Or maybe I didn't realise I was that interested in like garages, construction sites, for example. But then once you start tuning in, you
see it everywhere. You see it everywhere. You're kind of your sensitivity to those visual stimuli is kind of like, oh look, there's one there.
Exactly.
And you start to kind of see it everywhere because of the filter, your self-imposed filter.
I love that thing about design or creativity generally. It's like, sometimes, or especially when I was studying, like I would do a project that was very specifically using like one type of material, and it would just give me such a new lens on that thing. And then just walking around the city, you're fascinated by the representations of that thing that is everywhere that you've never thought about before.
Yeah. That's a good moment to pause, I think. I have got some rapid fire, this or that to finish with.
Love.
I've got about 12 of these to go through, so if you can just give me an answer without thinking about it too much. So when you're designing, would you do ideas in pencil or marker?
Marker.
And do you work with in an analog way or digital way?
Analog.
Monochrome or colourful?
Colourful.
Big sketches or little sketches?
Medium sketches.
Okay. And do you work with loose sheets or pages in a sketchbook?
Sketchbook.
And do you keep mistakes or do you bin mistakes?
Keep mistakes.
Okay. And just in terms of how you are as a creative, do you think then do, or do and then think?
Think then do.
Really? Oh my gosh! I would have
Maybe
said.
that's...
I thought you were going to say the other one. It's fine.
But I think it's maybe like...
I kind of think like you'd be like, I'm just going to do this thing like, if there's chaos, then like let it happen, bring it on.
I think there's always, unfortunately, a lot of thinking that has taken place before that point.
Okay.
Even if a lot of it is kind of what we're talking about, of that thinking has been going on for months.
Okay, so that's the thing. That's the thing to do. Okay, creative chaos or calm order.
I would like it to be calm order, but it's chaos.
Okay, good. Do you work with background noise or in silence?
Background noise.
All right. And is something finished or never finished?
Never finished.
Of course. And lastly, up all night to finish something or up early to finish something?
Up all night.
Very good. Lucy Nurnberg, thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much, Pascal.
It was really, really good. Thank you. Thank you to my guest Lucy Nurnberg on this episode of The Empty Canvas. Please like and subscribe and maybe share this with somebody that you think needs a bit of a nudge on their own creative journey. I'll see you in the next episode. Hey Lucy, one final question before we finish. I wanted to ask you, what does a lesbian take to her second date?
A U-Haul truck. What does a gay man take on his second date?
Second date?